Right.
John Starks was very, very good in that series, but everyone will forever remember Game Seven when he was, he was bad,
No,
and
yeah.
it just it breaks my heart. It breaks my heart, one, because the Knicks still haven't won a championship in a gazillion years, and doesn't look like it's anywhere close over the horizon. and
You never know. You never know.
right,
I do want to mention real quick about the NBA
sure.
because I was a Knicks fan, and then up until 2002, 2003, when Isaiah just that whole organization, that stretch where he just I I couldn't, I just couldn't deal with it anymore. So I just sort of pieced out, and I was sort of an NBA nomad, if you will. Like definitely watched the games, watched the playoffs, but I didn't have a team until a couple of years ago where I think I'm from Florida, so I needed a Florida team, born and raised in this area, in the state. So I figured I needed a Florida team. So I figured I really can't do the Heat because this was the big three, LeBron, Bosh, and Wade. So I definitely couldn't do that. So I figured I went a couple miles up north to Orlando, and this is when they had Dwight and that team that made it to the finals in '09. But I didn't become a fan until the next year in 2010 when they got to the Eastern Conference Finals and beat and lost to Boston, and they in 2010 and they ended up playing the LA Lakers. I I remember watching every NBA Finals from like '88 to now. Like I remember I could piece it all together. You can have memories of them. That NBA Finals was the worst NBA Finals I ever, not from a playing experience, but
Uh huh.
Boston, LA. It's like they played 57 times in the NBA Finals, and they got dang near half the championship. Now I got to subject myself to seeing them in the finals. Like, just, that finals always leaves a sore spot for me, and can't do it. That finals was even worse than the 2007 finals,
Right.
where San Antonio just blew San Antonio just blew Cleveland and
yes.
out. That 2010 finals with LA and Boston. I mean, entertaining, but I was just mad,
Well,
man.
you mentioned Florida, and obviously you're in the heart of the SEC country, and Florida has, you can say, has so many rivals. Out of all the teams that Florida play, which one do you dislike the most?
That's a good question. I don't. It's really because for those who may or may not know, Florida's main rivals, Tennessee, Georgia, Florida State, and Miami. But they have played Miami every year till about 1988, and maybe they play them once every 12 years or something. They are going to play in 2019. Uh, I don't like Tennessee. Like, I don't have a hate for Tennessee. Maybe it's because before this year we always had their number, so I don't hate Tennessee. I don't hate Georgia. That's the same reason for Tennessee because they've only beaten Florida 6 times in a quarter of a century, so I don't hold any hate for them. That being said, we have to play them. We'll play them in 2 weeks, so if they beat them, then that might be a different story.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, it's really now. It's the time to Florida State and Miami. As a kid, I did not like Bobby Bowden.
I can
I could just,
understand.
that, he was the bane of my childhood existence for just, because those teams were so good. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, him, Charlie Ward, the vision of Charlie Ward just running buckshot over the Florida defense is yeah, just that and Tommy Frazier and Lawrence Phillips running the option down Florida's throat in the '96 Fiesta Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
Never gonna forget that. Yeah, Florida State was just that team, but they were so loaded. If it wasn't Charlie Ward or Chris Winkie, it was Derek Brooks or Andre Wadsworth, or just those teams were so talented. And Miami just, that I don't like this.
Yeah.
I'm gonna just keep it honest. Because the rivalry started back. They reinstituted the rivalry back in 2002, 2003 when I was in school. Well, I was in school there, and this was the Miami team that of the early 2000s that was just loaded with talent. Funny thing you mentioned Miami because Joel Anderson writes in BuzzFeed talking about those Miami teams. Dude, they were just so loaded. And they went to Gainesville and played them in 2002. Wasn't even a contest. And those teams were just so loaded, and I couldn't stand them. It is just Florida State and Miami are 1 and 2 for me. Now, I bet you Miami's probably 1 for you since you're a Notre Dame fan.
Yes, and that's what I was about to say. Notre Dame was Miami bothered me more than any other team, and it really comes down to one particular game, and it was Jerry Faust last game at Notre Dame, and they went down to the Orange Bowl to play Miami, meaning not the actual Orange Bowl game, but the Orange Bowl is where the University of Miami used to play their home games, and they absolutely positively not only pummeled Notre Dame, but they ran up the score. And I mean, they celebrated. And you gotta understand the time when this happened. And so, and they just celebrate. And that was something you didn't see at the time. Now, you look at it now and no one would be as put off by it as it was then. But it just bothered me and bothered me and bothered me. Not only that they beat them, but they beat them. They intentionally ran up the score, and then all of these theatrics. It just bugged the dickens out of me. And then honestly, Michigan was the other one because as they got out the Faust years and got into the Holtz years, the Michigan games really and Holtz victories in those games is what put Notre Dame's name back into conversations. It was the victories over Michigan's, the one at night. I can't remember the year on the Michigan missed field goal. There was the one again at night at Notre Dame on a game-winning field goal by Notre Dame. There's the one where Bo Schembechler spouting off at his mouth all week that he was going to kick the Rocket, and Rocket took 2 back. You know, it's those. I mean,
I remember that game.
Yeah, so Michigan and Miami are definitely the two when I was growing up that's kind of stuck in my craw. And you know, so and go ahead.
No, I was gonna say real quick, probably up against it, but you had your bad experience in flying with Miami in the Orange Bowl. I at 2003 Florida Miami.
Yeah.
They had the lead. I never forget it. We were all celebrating because Florida had a big lead at the half, but go YouTube it because that game just talking about it just nah.
and
I'm good.
And then we had there's a couple of responses. There was one that says they hate Dallas because they love the Skins. They hate Duke because they beat UNLV in a point shaving game, and they hate UNC because of Freddie Brown. Now I want to go to a couple of those. One, the Duke because of the point shaving game. Stop it. Unfortunately for me, I have friends who still say that game was fixed. The '91 Final Four game. Look, I hate Duke more than life itself. I can't say that enough. The idea that people are trying to find a way to justify Duke winning that game, other than the fact that Duke won the game, is just absolutely positively ridiculous. It was not point shaving. It was nothing like that. And, you know, Stacey Augmon, if there's two people who I think are tired of being asked about it, it was Stacey Augmon and especially Greg Anthony. Because Greg Anthony, as he started working in TV, he started getting asked about it like more and more and more and more and more. And you can just see when he's asked about it now, you can just see the irritation. And he always says it. We had a bad night. Stacey Augmon, and I can see this, when he was asked what was the biggest difference between the year before and then that game, it made sense. First of all, that was even though UNLV was undefeated going to that game. Remember now, UNLV had lost people from that previous season to that season. Yeah, and then he said the one thing that Duke had in 91 that they didn't have 90 was Grant Hill. And he said he had never, ever been covered by a guy who was that tall and that athletic. And you know, he said that is kind of what kind of turned. And I tell people all the time, as much as UNLV had a bad night that night outside of the guard, Anderson Hunt. As much as they had a bad night that night, you know, UNLV still had an opportunity to win. As bad of a night as they still had an opportunity to win. Now, the one thing that Greg Anthony always talks about, everyone talks about the foul that fouled him out. And if people remember, Greg Anthony fouled out of that game with like 3 or 4 minutes left. UNLV played down the stretch without Anthony. He had fouled out, and he always says it wasn't the 5th foul that I was upset about. It was the 3rd and 4th foul that he felt weren't fouls that he was upset about. He said those fouls caused me to foul out, not the actual 5th foul that actually fouled him out. But this idea that is rigged is ridiculous. And, you know, Georgetown, North Carolina, that was definitely a classic. That was a game where North Carolina got their first 6 points on goaltending. And if you believe this, and I don't know if I really believe this or not, but allegedly John Thompson had instructed Patrick Ewing at the beginning of the game just block anything, whether it was goaltending or not. I don't know. To me, that always came off as an urban legend. But that legend, and that has been around since that game. That's how long that explanation had lived. And that game was in 82, and we're in like 2016, so it's like 34 years. And people still say, well, you know, they did it on purpose because it was an intimidation factor, so on and so forth. And when you looked at that North Carolina team, that I don't want to say it was stacked. I mean, you know, people always remember Jordan, but really that team was really dominated by James Worthy. And you know, Jordan made the shot that everyone remembers, obviously. James Worthy had an awesome game that night. And for those who plan on watching, there's a 30 for 30, I think that's going to be on Fox Slammer Jammer. That's the Final Four that people never remember that Houston was in. They were in the 82 Final Four. North Carolina beat them. Georgetown beat, I want to say Georgetown beat Louisville in the Final Four that year, and North Carolina beat, I believe it was Houston that year in 82. That's the one that people don't remember. Obviously, people remember 84, and then they remember 83, and then 84, because that's the loss to NC State in the finals, and then the loss to Georgetown in the finals. But we are up against a break. Thank you for all. I'm sorry I didn't get to everyone that responded. We did pretty, we got a nice response on that. A lot of people who responded said, you know, the teams that you expect for them to hate, the Yankees. There was a lot of Yankees. There was a lot of Duke, a lot of North Carolinas, and I guess the right people didn't respond, because I can tell you every Saturday, most people on my timeline hate Notre Dame. But we're up against the break. When we come back, we're going to take a look at this past weekend's NCAA football games. You are listening to Making the Cut.
Without much further ado, I give you
WBLZ Sports. We got balls.
Hey, do you love sports? Do you love pop culture? Do you like to talk about gossip and dirty laundry? You know, like you do with your friends when you're kicking back watching a game, at the bar, at home, just hanging out. That's exactly what you get when you listen to Sports Infusion. You get the world of pop culture and sports infused together on WBLZ every Wednesday night at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm your host, Pamela Michelle. Join me in the Sports Infusion gang as we bring you the best of both worlds. Why? We can say whatever we want on WBLZ because we've got balls.
Doug Pepper painting and pressure washing. He has over 30